Begum came from a Muslim family. She now lives in Cardiff. In the summer of 1947, she was living in Indian Punjab when attacks were happening near her village.
They said we will gather the women in one room and kill all of them, and then we'll fight them all. But we're not going to leave. We will die fighting here.
Her grandmother's intervention saved Kershiv's life. She persuaded the men of the family to spare the women and migrate to Pakistan, rather than to stay and fight.
My grandmother said no. She was a brave woman. She said, "This is our lives you were talking about. Who are you to decide?" Because we literally had no say in this. She took a stand. She literally ordered the men to leave for Pakistan, and they had to listen to her.
Many South Asians who came to Britain after independence were from places affected by partition. There are many stories like these among us. 70 years on, those who lived through that tumultuous time are finally talking about it.
those are the voices from the past. Let's learn now about the future and how the past affects the future. Politicians in Pakistan are selecting a new prime minister today after the former head of state, Nawaz Sharif, stood down on Friday. Here in the studio, Farooq Bajwa, who's the author of Pakistan, a Historical and Contemporary Look. Farooq, just reflect on the voices you've heard first. How much is that history overshadowing, echoing today?
I think a lot of this hasn't been spoken about before. I think it was almost too painful, too horrific. And I think one of the interesting things that's come out, particularly this summer in London, is that, as your previous piece said, a lot of the survivors of that actually eventually ended up in the UK, and now they're speaking for the first time about it. I understand in India they've been
Halo?
the Partition Museum in Amritsar or in Chandigarh.
No jadę na
So these
pusto.
things are finally being talked about.
No ja nie jadę tutaj po tych budowach teraz, jadę na tą autostradę, wjechałem na tą autostradę, o już minąłem te budowy, te tunele tutaj budują. Ale gdzie? Tam Bekreft miałeś zatwierdzić z kodem z bryloczka. Dobra, ja ci puszczę sygnał, to spróbujemy wejść z tableta, jak podasz mi te kody, no. Jak dojadę do Sandnes, tam zaparkuję, to ci puszczę sygnał, no. Dobra, no na razie.
He's never managed to complete a full term. The first time he was dismissed by the president, the second time there was a military coup, this time the Supreme Court has asked him to leave. It's widely expected that today an interim Prime Minister effectively will be sworn in, Shahid Khakal al-Abbasi, who's very close to Nawaz Sharif and his family. He's a former petroleum minister, but he's just keeping the seat warm for the younger brother Shahbaz Sharif, who's currently Chief Minister of the Punjab province, which is the largest and richest province of Punjab. He will probably have to, because he's not a member of the National Assembly, he'll have to resign from the Punjab Assembly, contest a seat in the next. And as soon as he becomes a member of the National Assembly, he's expected to become Prime Minister.
Farooq, there is a pro forma BBC World Service question on Pakistan when you have this period of political turmoil. What about the army?
This is actually, well, there are two views on Nawaz Sharif's resignation of last Friday. Some people see this as a sign of Pakistan's new maturity, that the Supreme Court decided a Prime Minister hadn't been honest in his wealth declaration and had the independence and the stature to be able to force a Prime Minister to resign. The other way of looking at it is that the Supreme Court wouldn't have done what it did had it not received some sort of a green light from the army. It was quite important from a wider political point of view that Nawaz Sharif could have become, had he just lasted another few months, the first Prime Minister ever to have served a full 5-year term, which in parliamentary democratic terms would have been a major milestone for Pakistan. So there are two ways of looking at this.
Thank you for your help, Farooq Bajwa, and his book is called Pakistan, a Historical and Contemporary Look, and that's exactly the kind of expertise we need, and thanks for bringing it into our World Update studio. This is the World Service from London. headlines just now from our newsroom. Turkey is holding the largest trial so far relating to last year's coup plot. 500 people are appearing in court in a case focusing on an airbase. Prosecutors say that was the heart of the plot. And latest figures show the Philippines has the fastest growing HIV epidemic in the region. Those are the top stories. British charities helping the homeless have been criticised for cooperating with immigration officers to deport Eastern European rough sleepers. The government says that those rough sleepers have no right to live in the UK if they are sleeping rough and not paying tax. Homelessness charities say they've been jointly patrolling with immigration officers so they could persuade people to return to their home countries voluntarily. Andrew Bomford joined them on an operation.
If we go outside a fenced-off piece of wasteland at 6 in the morning, police and immigration officers are gathering.
We'll follow here.
The land adjoins some railway sidings in North London. There's been an encampment of rough sleepers here for more than a year.
Expected to be up to 10 people encamping on the site, and they're all expected to be over in that direction.
I'm with an outreach worker, Lorraine Licence, from the homelessness charity Thames Reach, to observe this joint operation to clear the camp. But to our surprise, the police ask us to stay back while they go in.
That time as they've been told not to go to the site.
These joint operations happen frequently. Homelessness charities can't stop anyone from being deported, but they can offer help to those not being detained. So 5 people have been found sleeping rough here, all from Romania. And the first of the man is being led away, under arrest, 2 officers holding his arms.
How long have you been here for?
1.5 years.
1.5 years?
Yeah.
On this side?
Yeah.
Have you been working?
Yeah, I work when I find painters, building construction, everything. Last year, one example, last year I find a job every day. And this year, 2-3 days each week.
And what's going to happen to you now?
I don't know. They know.
They, the immigration officers, will take them to a removal centre for deportation to Romania. Even though they're EU citizens and so have the right to live and work legally in Britain, they do not have the right to sleep rough and work illegally, paying no tax, according to the government. Sergeant Jane Tuffin is from the police.
It's just a shanty town, really. Litter everywhere. This is an issue across the whole of North London that we just have to keep pushing back at. Because if you don't, then you're exposing people to risk, and I don't think it's okay for people to be living like this.
Not all the Romanians are detained. One of the 5, Mikhail, had only been sleeping rough for 2 nights and had been working legally, so he's allowed to stay in the UK. And Lorraine from Thames Reach is able to help him.
Okay, so what it is that we can do is we can help you look for accommodation. Have you got a national insurance number? Yeah, and do you have a bank account?
Yes.
And documents, ID, so we can help look for accommodation for you.
Yes, I'm for you.
We take him by car to an assessment centre where he can be helped with housing and finding work. On the way there, he described being ripped off by builders who hired him but didn't pay him for the work done.
Me no have experience good in London. Yeah, it's for me is trauma. Yes, London.
London in particular has become a magnet for rough sleepers, many from Eastern Europe. More than 8,000 people spent at least one night in the streets of the capital last year, but a third of them from Central and Eastern Europe, mostly from Romania.
Okay, good luck.
Thank you very much.
Okay.
We dropped Mikhail off at the assessment centre. He hopes his luck has changed.
It's new life. I'm very lucky. Thank you.
Yeah.
It's to help people like Mikhail that homelessness charities team up with immigration officers in these patrols. But the policy is a controversial one. A large number of migrant organisations say they shouldn't cooperate or share information with authorities. Figures on deportations are not published, but freedom of information laws have been used to show that more than 200 people have been removed since the joint operations began last year. The figures were found by Jean Demar from North East London Migrant Action.
It's a partnership between the Home Office and the homelessness charities that make that policy so effective. If it was immigration officers simply going out, it would take them a very long time to find people and to identify who is a foreign national and who is a British national. They found that the intelligence was there, through the work of the street outreach workers.
Thames Reach denied that they hand over information on rough sleepers to immigration officers, but the chief executive, Jeremy Swain, says they do cooperate because sometimes they can help and sometimes they can persuade people to return home voluntarily.
So we could be very purist about this and say, look, we're going to step away and let the Home Office get on with that and have nothing to do with it. But our absolute commitment is to do the best we can for the people on the street, and we're always going to be driven by that.
I found the dead body a bit further down in the middle of this field.
Another of their outreach workers, Ben Sebok, showed me the place where he came across the remains of a dead Polish rough sleeper in the winter. For Thames Reach, they'll do whatever it takes to avoid this sort of tragedy, even if getting them off the streets can only be achieved by deporting them.
Andrew Bonford reporting. What do jihadis do in their spare moments when they're not actually waging jihad? The answer you might find surprising. It involves poetry, communal weeping, dream interpretation and music. Thomas Heckhammer is a senior research fellow at the Norwegian Defence Research in Oslo. He has a new book, it's called Jihadi Culture, trying to understand just what jihadis do for fun.
We have an image of jihadis as very brutal, macho types, non-sentimental types, but when we look at their cultural life, the things they do in their spare time, it's actually a very sort of sentimental world that opens up. They spend a lot of time on poetry, on music, and they even weep a lot together. So what goes on inside these groups is quite different from the image we have of them from the outside.
Yes, weeping a lot. You described that in your book. Tell us a bit more about that. It's a kind of collective ritual.
Yes, weeping is considered a good thing inside these groups because it's a sign of devotion. By weeping you show that your faith is strong and that you care deeply about the cause. So it's perfectly acceptable in these circles to sort of be a strong and heroic fighter on the one hand, but and also weep a lot at the same time. In fact, the epithet or the name "he who weeps a lot" is quite common and was used notably about the Al-Qaeda leader in Iraq in the 2000s, Abu Musab al-Zarqawi. So he was known simultaneously as the butcherer and as he who weeps a lot. So they see no contradiction in this.
And you've seen some of the artwork, the poetry. What's that like?
It's quite kitsch, to be frank. It's very romantic, archaic, because they're trying to be like the earliest Muslims, and they're trying to imitate the earliest artwork. So it's quite romantic and perhaps not particularly modern, I would say, but it does seem to catch on. There's a whole world of jihadi iconography out there with lots and lots of images and even more videos. So the visual world of jihadism is extremely rich.
And yet, the violence, the horrific acts they carry out make them seem anything other than culturally aware, sensitive, or sentimental.
Yes, that's what's so interesting about this universe, in a sense. It's all these things at the same time. It is both extremely brutal and extremely rigid, and at times very soft and artistically sensitive at the same time. So it's a very different environment than most people live in.
So what's to be the development of it? Because this is a relatively new phenomenon. They use social media and digital techniques to make very glib-looking videos, very snazzy. What's this going to do to those people who've got caught up in it and those who might in the future?
The thing about this jihadi culture is that it will probably live on for a very long time on the internet. The cultural products are very easily diffusible online, and they're almost impossible to scrape away from the internet. So even though organizations will come and go, so Islamic State will probably weaken considerably in the next few years, but the jihadi culture will live on, I think.
Thomas Heckhammer, he's a senior research fellow at the Norwegian Defence Research in Oslo, and his new book, which is full of surprises, is called Jihadi Culture. Well, that's World Update for now. Don't forget the podcast is 7 days a week. It's the World Update Daily Commute. You can tell us what you think about the items you hear on Twitter, at BBC Dan Damon. On Twitter is one way, or there's a Dan Damon journalist page on Facebook. And join us for more World Update tomorrow.
bbc.com/news, you get the latest news stories anytime you like. Whether you're interested in science, health, technology or business, the bbc.com/news website can offer it all. It also gives you the opportunity to listen live to our news output or check the latest breaking news with our minute-by-minute news feed. All this content, coverage and opportunity makes the BBC the world leader in news coverage online. bbc.com/news.
This is the BBC World Service, bringing our global audience news from around the world. On air and online, this is the BBC World Service, the world's radio station.
Her er NRK Dagsnytt klokka 12. Vest politidistrikt etterlyser en mann dømt for seksuelle overgrep mot mindreårige gutter. Mannen er for tiden prøveløslatt fra en forvaringsdom, men han unnlot å returnere til pålagt oppholdssted etter en kort permisjon, og har dermed brutt vilkårene for prøveløslatelsen.